So joining me on today's Dismantled Ideas podcast, we have none other than Richie Bostock, aka the Breath Guy, fresh out of a 6-week retreat. So welcome back to society, man.
Slowly making my way back, and it's very nice to see you and to chat to you again.
Likewise. I was just commenting on how fantastic your beard and hair combo is at the moment. You look definitely like you're fresh out of a retreat, but in a fantastic way.
Yeah, I didn't take a razor. I didn't take a laptop. I didn't take anything. I basically just took a notepad and a backpack and just went off into the wilderness for a little bit. It's a lot happening in the world right now, and I had a super busy first few months of lockdown, and I just felt like it was time to create some space in my own life, and I'm feeling refreshed. I'm feeling inspired, and highly recommend that if you can, get out in nature, guys. Holy moly, leave your phones at home and just enjoy some time out in nature. It's very, very, very healing and very refreshing.
Whereabouts did you go, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I went up to a spot in Leicestershire initially. So there's a friend has a house there that's just been sitting empty because they're not there. So they were like, if you want to go there for a bit, I went there for a bit. Then I went down to Devon, and then went to Glastonbury.
Ooh.
Yeah, so just all sorts of different places, all sorts of different environments. There was lots of farmland and rolling hills, and then down in Devon there's the Dartmoor National Park with the beautiful moors, and of course all the beaches as well. So bit of ocean, bit of the moors and some stone circles, and
amazing.
And yeah, it was absolutely brilliant, mate. I've only been in the UK for about just over 3 years, but I haven't necessarily done a lot of traveling around the UK. And so to see it so beautifully in the brilliant weather we had during this time as well, has just been, magical.
I'm from Devon, so I hear you. Devon's beautiful. Devon's in my heart always, obviously.
Yeah, I've never ever seen before. I'm from Australia originally, right? So when it comes to things like beaches, we're pretty spoiled. But Devon has some great beaches, and I've never seen the combination of like the rolling hills and farmland going straight into a beach, basically. Like that was really bizarre. So be lying on the beach, you just look to your left, and you just see this like hill with sheep. And you go, oh, that's weird. But yeah, beautiful place.
Amazing. Well, I'm pleased that you're refreshed and back from your tour and ready to go. Well, not really a tour, but a personal tour.
Personal tour, bit of a vision quest,
Amazing. I like that. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Obviously today we are going to talk all about dismantling breathwork, and what we mean by that is, picking it apart a little bit and finding out what makes breathwork tick from your eyes and from your background, and how you got involved with it, and speaking a bit about that side of things as well. So, obviously you are an expert in breathwork. That comes with the territory. You wouldn't be called the breath guy otherwise. So what is the science behind breathwork? Obviously it makes you feel fantastic, but why does it make you feel fantastic?
Well, to even take a bit of a step back, what is breath work? Because, I think even for many people who maybe are just coming across that term for the first time, that might even seem like a kind of strange combination of words, breath and work. Like, do I actually need to work on my breath? Don't I just breathe anyway? And you're totally right. We breathe anywhere between about 19,000 to 27,000 times per day. It's quite a big range, actually. It varies a lot between person to person. And if you did anything else that many times a day, you'd probably have a pretty good idea of why you do it, how you do it. But the breath has kind of just been, thrown under the rug a little bit and taken for granted as just something that just happens. Just happens for me to stay alive. But what is so interesting about the breath is that the way that we breathe actually affects just about every single system in the body. So things like your cardiovascular system, your nervous system, your endocrine system, that's your hormones, your respiratory system, obviously, your lymphatic system, your digestive system, even your metabolism can be affected by the way that you breathe. So straight away we go, okay, well, that's interesting. But if we have this thing that affects us so radically, it's probably pretty important to know how it does. And maybe there are ways to be able to use it, which is where breathwork comes in. So breathwork is really any time that you become aware of your breathing and then start to change it to create some sort of physical, mental, or emotional benefit for yourself. And that might be as simple as, on its most simplest form, breathing in a certain way for a few minutes to help you to feel relaxed when you're stressed. And to the other side of things, where you might lie down and breathe in certain ways for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and as an incredible form of emotional therapy, and to be able to experience altered states of consciousness and have transcendent experiences. And then there's everything in between. So we basically have this gateway into our autonomic nervous system, which really controls everything that happens inside of us that we don't have to think about, all those systems I was speaking about before. We have a way to be able to affect these in order to create a benefit. So we can use it to help to control our emotion or manage our emotion, to be able to affect us physically, which is actually how I got into breathwork originally, was to help my dad, who was suffering from MS. And we use breathwork to be able to really help him with his MS, to be able to meditate and to be able to heal even emotional things like traumas or accumulated stress or tension that might be impacting you or kind of stuck in your nervous system. So there's a lot of different applications for breathwork. And when we talk about the science of breathwork, I mean, you'd have to look at it very specifically as to what we're talking about, but more in a very broad sense. Basically, it's a way of using it's using your breath to be able to affect what's happening inside of you.
And you mentioned about your dad and the situation with him, and how that's how you kind of discovered it in the first place. Did it noticeably help your dad? Did it really improve his situation?
Not just noticeably, as in it stopped it from progressing completely.
Oh, wow.
So it's something called the Wim Hof Method, which is the first type of breath work that I was ever introduced to. And the Wim Hof Method includes some breathing techniques, but also cold showers. So it's like cold exposure, but for most people, that's just a cold shower, or if you can, an ice bath or a cold dip in the sea or something like that. But a daily practice of that really, really helped. And it helps a lot of anybody who has an autoimmune issue or an inflammatory disorder, in terms of being able to affect the way that your inflammatory cytokines respond. So to actually be able to down-regulate certain inflammatory proteins such as TNF alpha, IL-6 and IL-8, interleukin 6 and interleukin 8, to be able to decrease the inflammatory response as part of your immune system, which if you have an autoimmune disease where your immune system is running haywire and attacking your physical body itself, then it's actually a very useful thing.
Wow. I mean, I dipped my toe, kind of pun intended, I guess, with some Wim Hof Method activity. I've been doing cold showers every morning for about coming up 4 months now.
Oh, good.
And weirdly, I've started to find it harder for some reason. I don't know why. Like I've been having a real mental struggle of getting into the shower in the mornings, but I need to try and get over that somehow. I don't know why. I'm sure that's not supposed to happen.
Well, I mean, nothing is supposed to happen or not supposed to happen, right? It's just your experience. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily get easier, if that makes sense. Like, I still do cold showers every day. And I think once you get into a rhythm of it after a week or two, you get to a point where you can adequately convince yourself to get in. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily become easier. And that's kind of the point, actually. If it became easy, then you probably wouldn't need to do it anymore. But, I'm not sure how you're doing it. But if for anyone who wants to get started with cold showers, and, you can perhaps look up the benefits of cold showers. It's been used in various societies and cultures forever. Cold exposure, anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Whether it's especially in like a lot of Eastern European countries where they do the sauna and then going into the snow or into ice water. You know, they have that quite a lot. But what I was going to say though was, if you're just getting started with cold showers, have your normal shower first. Like go have a hot, normal, warm shower, and then switch to cold and finish cold. It's an easy, especially first thing in the morning, and you're kind of like, oh, we're getting up out of bed. To go straight into cold can be quite challenging and demanding of your system. So if you have
Bit of a shock.
Allow your body to kind of wake up a little bit more and then go into cold. That's still what I do to this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a couple of problems with my last place because we couldn't get the shower to cool down quickly enough after it was hot.
Oh, really?
Bad plumbing. It speaks to my old landlord, actually.
My place has the opposite. It takes too long to get hot. You have to like keep it running for about 2 minutes before you get any hot water.
Maybe we should swap and just see how we...
Well, find where you live and find where I live. And if we move to a point in the middle, we'll probably be okay.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out where that might be. Anyway, we can figure that out. So you mentioned, you obviously know quite a lot about the Wim Hof Method and the practices. Did you train with the Iceman himself?
I did. Yeah.
Oh,
well,
wow.
I became a Wim Hof instructor, and to become a Wim Hof instructor, especially, back in the day, I think now he's a little bit less involved because there are just so many people wanting to become a Wim Hof instructor. I don't think he can train everybody. But back in the day, he was present at all the trainings and teaches you things, and there's other instructors as well who teach you. But Wim's there. Yeah, Wim's he's an incredible man, and has done a lot. And even for breath work has, really put breath work on the map in a big way. And he kind of was one of the real pioneers in trying to bring more science to it, which is really good because obviously breathwork has been, around for forever. You only need to look at some of the ancient traditions, whether it's in Chinese medicine or the yogic styles of breathing like pranayama, or the Sufi styles of breathwork, in South American shamanism cultures. They all have breathwork and they've been using them for centuries. But what's been great for Wim about Wim and in the West is that, he was able to bring more science to it. And science is kind of the language of our time, right? It's like we can believe in things once it's scientifically proven, which sometimes gets in our way and sometimes is useful. Well, it's always useful, but sometimes gets in our way. So he's been brilliant in that sense. And he's a fun guy.
I was going to say, what was he like as a person to try? I know we're going a little bit off piste here, but I'm just really intrigued. Whenever I see videos of him, and he seems like such a character.
Yeah, I mean, he is him. Like whatever you've seen in the videos is exactly what he's like in real life. And that's what's beautiful about Wim. Actually, is like he doesn't really conform to any social norm. He is just him. He doesn't really care what other people think about him. He just does what he does, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
What was the hardest part of the Wim Hof training regime? If you had to put your finger on one part, as someone that was just coming to it for the first time.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did, so in the training in Poland, Wim wasn't there for that training. But it was with some of his instructors, is we had to go into the ice water. So we were standing on the ice, like you could call it, like there's a waterfall basically. And the water, the only reason why the entire water isn't frozen is because there's a waterfall with like running water, right? So it's kind of, think of it like there's a waterfall here, and then there's, flowing water here, and then the ice kind of starts going in this direction. And so we're standing on the ice over here, and we have to jump into the water, stay in the water for a few minutes, come back out of the water standing on the ice, and then warm up naturally. So it's like -4 degrees out. I'm pretty sure the water is like 0 degrees basically. So we're standing on the ice in our shorts, and we have to warm up. And we're not allowed to dry off or anything like that. We just have to stand on the ice and warm up. And so we use a series of it's essentially, it comes from Qigong. It's called horse stance, and it's ways of just moving energy through the body in order to warm up. So you get a few minutes to try and warm up, and then you have to jump back in the water again for a second time, and then same for a few minutes, and then come back out and do the same thing, and then one more time, jump back in the water again, and then come back out. And you're kind of having to psych yourself up each time because your body just feels like it's getting progressively colder and colder.
I can imagine. Wow.
And having to get yourself to jump back in after you've been basically in sub-zero temperatures in your shorts for the last 10 minutes is tough. But it's such a fascinating experience though. I came out of the water the third time, and I was standing on the ice, and the weirdest thing happened where all sort of feeling or sensation of feeling cold disappeared.
Really?
In fact, I felt boiling hot. And now this actually worried me because I did some research before I went to Poland, and I think one of the first signs of hypothermia is that instead of feeling cold, you actually feel hot. And it's why when a lot of mountaineers get lost and then the police or whoever find their bodies, quite often they've taken off all their clothes and then frozen to death. So I was like, oh no, I'm going to be that guy.
It's happening. It's happening.
The first guy to catch hypothermia and ruin the week for everybody. So I go to the instructor who's leading this exercise, and I tap him on the shoulder, and I'm like, hey, so I'm boiling hot right now. I look around, and everyone's kind of still really cold and shivering and stuff like that. And I'm like, am I going to die? And he just kind of gives me a big smile, and he goes, Rich, look at your shoulders. And I turn and look at my shoulders, and there's steam coming off my back. And I'm like, what? What is happening? And he just gives me a big smile, and he goes, well done, good job. So, basically you, it's not necessarily scientifically proven what you're doing right now, but what we say is that you've just been able to step out of your way so much that the body has been given full permission to do whatever it needs to do to survive.
Amazing.
And what it means is that you probably ramped up your metabolism, and it's increasing your core body temperature. And so, yeah, you're inside, you're on fire right now. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's insane that your body can do that. It's madness.
Well, yeah, what has been measured is Wim has increased his core body temperature in the lab by, I think, nearly 300%.
Wow.
No, sorry, not core temperature. Sorry, he increased his metabolism by nearly 300%, which in order to be able to stay at a stable core body temperature. So it's definitely possible. It's interesting to understand why, though. That's the fun part.
I would like to see someone increase their body temperature by 300%. I think I can imagine one of the characters from the Fantastic Four, like the big fireman, just
that's it. Just disappears in a puff of smoke, or just flies off into space. Yeah.
You've got a breathwork book coming out very, very soon, haven't you? Called Exhale.
Yes. I do.
Do you think? I mean, has that always been your dream ever since you got into breathwork, or is it something that just kind of happened?
Yeah, it just kind of happened. Did I have an intention to write a book at some point? Yeah, I did. Just because what I found is that in order to really understand this whole breathwork thing, there are a lot. I've always kind of been what's called a systems thinker. And what a systems thinker does is that rather than just going down one silo of knowledge or expertise or one way of thinking about things, it's always trying to understand how each thing affects another thing. And what that often means is that you want to kind of get a big understanding of a full picture of whatever it is that you're going into. And it's just naturally how I'm wired. It's if I kind of go down one rabbit hole, I want to understand all the other rabbit holes around it as well, and how they kind of all interlink and affect each other. And so I spent, after having my first experience with the Wim Hof Method and eventually becoming an instructor, I then started to look at what else was out there and what other styles of breath work, who else is doing cool things with breathing. And that took me around the world for about 3.5 years, learning from all sorts of different people about breath work. And so physiotherapists, doctors, researchers, psychologists, counselors, breathwork masters, yogis, all sorts of different people around, anybody who was just doing anything cool with the breath, really. And so what I wanted to write about at some point is a book that kind of provides the overview of everything, because a lot of people, they try breathwork for the first time, it blows them away, and they go, oh my God, like, I want to read more about this. Like, can you recommend a good book? And I'm like, well, how much time have you got? Because I've got about 20, that I think you need to kind of touch on to be able to get a bit of an idea around what this whole breathwork thing actually is. So I went, okay, what there needs to be is a book that it acts as a really good starting point for somebody to come in and go, okay, this is the map of what I can do with my breath. Here is some ways to implement my breath with various techniques and various methodologies. And if there's something that I really like, that really resonates with me, I can research and go deeper. So it's almost like trying to provide the surface layer across all sorts of different types of breath work, but at the same time, just that surface layer, when applied correctly, can be really, really transformational. So I always had that in the back of my head. And then one day a publisher just came and said, hey, do you want to write a book about breath work? And I went, okay, I can do that.
Amazing. I love it when a plan comes together, when you don't even have to, you sort of manifested it into reality, maybe.
And do you want to hear something really funny? As soon as I met the first publisher I met, I think I had 4 other publishers in the next 5 weeks reach out to me asking if I wanted to write a book. So I went from absolutely no intention of writing a book one day, but not actively trying to do anything about it, to having 5 offers on the table and being like, holy moly, what's going on? So yeah, something funny at work, I think.
Do you think the book could potentially kick off a bit of a breathwork revolution? Could you become the Wim Hof of breathwork? I mean, you've got the hair now, you've got the beard now, you've taken a step in the right direction. Is this a thing that might happen?
Well, I think the breathwork revolution has already started. There's so many incredible people who are teaching breathwork and all approaching it from different angles, and it's really getting out there, and like even in my book, I talk about a lot of different people who I've learned from or had experiences with, and their kind of take on breathwork and how they teach things and the way that it's useful. So I think there's a lot of, I think it's a big collective effort. There's a lot of people out there who are, spreading the good word of this beautiful work. I think maybe where I'm uniquely placed is that one of my things that I most enjoy doing is reaching the people who have never thought about trying meditation, or have never, know of mindfulness as this weird thing that hippies do. Like I love reaching the people who aren't in this work at all, or who really have no experience, and being able to share it with them in a very easy and digestible way, because at the end of the day, it's just breathing, right? Like it's central to all of us. We all do it. It's very relatable for everyone. So, I really enjoy that, and it's taken me to some really cool places. I've taught breathwork sessions in all sorts of weird and wacky places. Some I can say, some I can't actually say on record, really? Which is interesting.
Interesting. Can you give us any clues? He's thinking about it.
I don't think I can.
Damn it! I was expecting some serious juice then. That was going to be
sorry,
like...
I shouldn't have even said anything.
No, it's okay.
That's just mean. But like, weird places. Like I even did a breathwork session in an Itsu restaurant, which
Okay.
for those of you who aren't from the UK, Itsu is a sushi restaurant, like a fast food sushi restaurant. So I did a breathwork, it's in really random places. Even to like in a lot of different festivals. I got to teach breathwork at Glastonbury Festival,
Yes, I
which was
saw
really
that.
cool.
Unreal.
British Summertime Festival to 2,500 people breathing together, So it's happening. The breathwork revolution's happening anyway, and we're all part of it.
Can you remember your first ever breathwork session? And was it love at first breath?
It really was. I think I even mentioned this in my book. It was in Poland, and it was with the Wim Hof Method technique, and I had the most incredible. What's the right way to put it? Liberating experience where what can happen when you lie down and do these breathing techniques for long periods of time is it can drive you into these altered states of consciousness where you get to experience all sorts of different things. And sometimes it can be quite emotional, and sometimes that emotion can be around releasing trauma or releasing stress or tension in your nervous system. Or it could be experiencing ecstatic states. And in this session, it was experiencing absolutely incredible states and feelings of love and power. This almost like this feeling that I could do anything, that there was no such thing, nothing that could stop me, that the world was my oyster, and that I could do all sorts of good things in the world. And there was just this amazing certainty. And it was just the most incredible experience. I'd never felt anything like it before. And then I went, but I remember because we did these sessions early in the morning before breakfast, and then we're having breakfast. I remember having like a spoonful of eggs, and just as I was about to eat it, had this thought of like, if this is just breathing, and I felt that just by breathing, then why doesn't everybody know about this? Because if it's that simple, then it's almost criminal that everyone doesn't know about it. So that was the seed that was planted.
That's amazing. I mean, Would you say that's your best ever breathwork session? That realization, or is there something else you can put your finger on another time?
I mean, best I think is kind of like a subjective word. Like I've done a lot of breathing, as is everybody, but I've but a lot of these sessions, and what always is outstanding to me is how no two breath sessions are the same. That they are always different. Even if you do the exact same technique and maybe you play music in the background and you have the exact same soundtrack and you're lying or sitting in the exact same position, you'll feel something different, whether it's physically, energetically, or emotionally or mentally. I mean, yeah, I've had so many different experiences, and they range from, when we talk about the deep breathwork sessions, incredibly cathartic experiences of releasing trauma, and sometimes even things that I didn't even know that I was holding, like things I didn't even know were affecting me, and all of a sudden just coming to the surface. So experiencing that and having these incredible releases that really just open you up to something so much more beautiful, a more beautiful experience of life. To other cool stuff like, maybe dissolving into the universe and just becoming at one with everything, like those deep, deep states of meditation. Have you seen Doctor Strange before, the movie?
Do you know what? I actually haven't.
Oh, it's a great movie, mate. But
Is that the one with Benedict Cumberbatch in it?
That's it. Yeah. And but there's this, like, one of the things that he experiences is what a lot of people call astral projection. This idea that you have a physical body and then you have like an astral body that can be knocked out of you, and you can come out and have an out of body experience and see the physical world but still be there. So I've had a lot of out of body experience as well, where you get to experience a slightly different state of reality. And
sounds incredible.
Yeah, hey, and that's what's so cool is, that we can all do it, like and breath work is just one way to experience that, like meditation obviously has been, if there's probably anything that's older than the kind of breathwork techniques that we use these days, just straight meditation is probably the original way of transcendence. And you can easily, not maybe not easily, but you can definitely get there just through pure meditation too. The great sages and mystics of our time have been constantly exploring these greater realms of consciousness and having these kinds of experiences. And what's cool now is that with the availability of information, all their techniques and their wisdom and their teaching is available to all of us now. So we get to go on our own little journeys of exploration. And for me, it was breathwork, and it continues to evolve, but everyone has their own way of getting there.
The way you talk about some of these experiences, certainly the kind of astral plane and out of body experiences, and that area of what you do and the experience of it all, it almost sounds very psychedelic. Do you think psychedelics and breath work are intrinsically linked to meditation? Is it all part of the same sphere, or is it something slightly different?
I think it's all different paths to the same destination.
Okay.
And scientifically, we're probably seeing that as well. So when I think what's really great is now the scientific community is doing a lot of work around trying to understand what happens in the brain when we take psychedelic substances and have these transcendental experiences. And one of the things that happens is something called transient hypofrontality, which is essentially the dulling down or reducing of activity in the prefrontal cortex. And this is the part of the brain that is contains like the monkey mind, right? It's the part of the brain that has all the chatter, that is super smart and rational and logical, and it helps us to do all the things that we can do in our life. But at the same time, for many people, can often get in the way sometimes too. Like, for example, if you struggle with things like meditation, it's most likely because you are struggling with being able to influence the activity in your PFC, your prefrontal cortex. So that's
which is all the more reason to do it, right?
Exactly. It's all training, right? And we more and more we understand how plastic our brain is and how malleable it is and how much it can change. And it doesn't even take that long necessarily. But what I actually theorize is that breathwork creates that same transient hypofrontality. And there's actually when you look at respiratory physiology and how it affects blood flow to the body, so when you use certain breath techniques, it makes sense actually that this transient hypofrontality would occur. And I don't think it's actually been measured. I don't think someone's ever jumped in an fMRI and done these techniques and actually seen what's going on. But if we follow the breadcrumbs in terms of respiratory physiology, moving then into neurology, it does make sense. I know a few people in Imperial College here in London, and I'm really hoping one day, like, somehow I can jump in an fMRI and huff and puff a bit and see what happens. But
that seems like it should be nailed on. Surely, you should absolutely. That should be.
Yeah,
your destiny.
I think so. And actually, I've been hoping to make it happen for the last at least 6 months or so. Not necessarily with Imperial, but just actually reaching out to some various organizations, research groups, and of course, when the whole COVID thing happens, that kind of put a stop on everything. But yeah, so it's really exciting actually to see. As it grows in popularity, and I'm sure there'll be more and more interest in trying to understand exactly what's going on physiologically, pathologically. So yeah, I think we'll get there at some point.
I think you touched on something then which really resonates. I've attempted meditation lots, and whilst I do feel like I'm getting something out of it, I do find it hard. Like my monkey brain is definitely very overactive. It doesn't like to stop very often, which is, as we say, more the reason for actually trying to persist with it. But I think this is why I much prefer breath work. This is what, because it gives my brain something automatically to focus on. It really, really helps.
And of course, the most simple form of breath work is simple breath awareness, so you're not actually doing any breathing of controlling or consciously changing the breath, but just being aware of the breath as you inhale and as you exhale. And that is, basically the primary pillar of almost every single meditation practice is the watching of the breath. But I totally hear you, and I hear it all the time when people say, like, is this going to be different to meditation? Because I can't meditate. And, but the thing with meditation is, you're trying to get a hold of your mind with your mind, so it's tricky. It's really hard. Breath work, in especially in the ways that I teach it and others teach it as well, you're getting control of the mind using your body, and it's much easier and it's very different. Like you said, you have something to focus on and you're actually actively doing something, but that action of doing something is driving your brain into that same meditative state. So it's almost like you're doing something and all of a sudden, whoops, like I'm in my flow state, I'm in that meditative state, I'm in that state of bliss, or I'm in that state of whatever it is. So, and it can happen within just a couple of minutes. I actually tell a lot of people who still have a meditation practice, and I have a meditation practice. It's not just all pure breath work, but doing like even just 2 to 3 minutes of breath work before you start your formal meditation practice almost acts like a speed ramp to going into that meditation practice. So you don't spend the first 5-10 minutes kind of just like, like I'm a bit uncomfortable and I can't stop thinking and what am I doing tomorrow? Or it's really, really useful. You get more bang for your buck. So yeah, it resonates.
That's a really great way of looking at it. I love that. I think maybe I should kick off. Maybe tomorrow, maybe this afternoon. I will kick off and see. I feel inspired to. I feel like that it makes a lot of sense for the way my brain works. So yeah, that sounds amazing. Do you know much? I mean, I dipped in and out of a lot of his content a little while ago, but I haven't really engaged with it lots recently. Tony Robbins, are you big on Tony Robbins' stuff and what he's up to? Yes and no.
Yeah, I've been to one of his events. Is like
oh wow,
Unleash the Power Within. I went when I first arrived in London. Actually, I just wanted to see what it was all about, because he's just such a larger than life character, right? I really just
physically and mentally,
mentally, all, and I just went, and I love the idea of these big group events as well. And I know that, breathwork is going to go through the same thing. We did it once in Hyde Park, 2,500 people, but I want to create like full events where we have that many people together, going through this journey together, mainly with the tool of breathwork. At the moment, it might be tricky. I don't think a lot of people want to get together in big groups and breathe heavily for long periods of time. But in the future, fingers crossed. I think Tony's work is great. Yeah, of course. I think he sets a gold standard for, I guess like the professionalism of how to deliver really good work and how to, how to create, rapid change. His work is powerful. He was trained originally in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, yes, which is a fantastic tool, and it's and he's combined it with a bunch of other things as well. So I think, there's a reason why he gets paid the big bucks, right? And
a few pound here and there, apparently. I've heard on the grapevine,
And I think he's very like well intentioned. I think like his heart's in the right place, and he wants to. I think everything about Tony is very American, in that everything's like, he's a big person, and everything about what he does has to be big. So that includes like even like the way that he he helps the world like with charitable foundations, that kind of thing. Like everything is just like, it's just massive on such a giant scale. You know, I think I heard he had his 60th birthday recently. I saw this video, and it was like a fundraising big party, and had all like these amazing celebrities performing and stuff. So I think through his 60th birthday party, they raised $16 million for an organization that's trying to stop child sex trafficking. You know, so he makes change at scale, I think.
Yeah, you know, he is a larger than life character. I remember listening to a lot of his podcasts, and I watched. You remember there was a documentary about him doing the rounds on Netflix a little while ago.
I'm Not Your Guru. I remember that.
Yeah,
one.
that was it. That was it. And I found that really interesting. Like, he talked about his kind of priming methodology in the morning that he does, where he sort of, I mean, not everyone's got a plunge pool, but unfortunately, yeah, exactly. And I remember watching that and thinking, is this breathwork just rebranded slightly for the Tony Robbins audience?
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
Well, of course. I mean, but at the same time, you know, it's kind of like, well, let's put it this way. The yogis out of India basically created a name for any way to breathe. Like when we look at like all the different like techniques as part of pranayama, they've got it nailed down, you know, and that's been around for centuries. So you could almost say that really any technique that comes out these days, you know, yoga's already done it. You know, that's been my experience anyway. I haven't really found much that yoga hasn't done already. But it's just kind of the nature of things, right? Is that, you know, it's, you know, what Tony does with his like, you know, that's it's just it's a kriya. It comes from Kriya Yoga, and even the Wim Hof Method. Although Wim says he didn't get it from yoga, but like the actual physical practice of deeper breathing and breath holding is also in yoga as well. So I think, you know, everyone is just building on top of the shoulders of the people that came before them, and it's just very natural that's evolution. You know, like even the work that I teach is just a combination of the things that people have taught me, and then I add my own flavor to it, and I mix it in certain ways, and maybe there's certain things that I do that are quite unique, but at the end of the day, I learned it from somebody, and I learned other things from other people, and I've just kind of mesh it together with the understanding of what everything does to create something of value. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, you know, where we're getting at in humanity is most things are kind of just rebranded other things. Like, you know, this brand new technique or whatever it is probably 95% a technique that's been before it, with 5% something new or something different.
Nothing is new anymore. Isn't that a famous phrase? Nothing. Maybe, there are no new ideas. Nothing is new.
We just try and improve on the things that have come before us. And even, you know, there are people who will teach the exact same thing in terms of same techniques and stuff, but they just maybe even explain it slightly differently and call it different names, and that actually reaches different audiences, you know. So it's as long as it's helping people, I suppose, you know, it's good.
Maybe in like 200 years time there will be another The Breath guy who will also be called Richie, and I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Who's to say there isn't one right now in some sort of like alternate reality, or some interesting like just parallel to reality or dimension that's just half a tone off ours, and that Richie has a slightly longer beard and slightly longer hair, and you know, and he teaches things the exact same way. Like, yeah.
Have you ever looked back? I mean, you mentioned the sort of yogic inputs from the past and how everything is kind of built from that. Have you done much research or looked much further back in terms of where breathwork first started appearing, or do you have an inkling of any of that kind of stuff?
Well, we've been breathing for a while as a species. You know, It's interesting you asked that. It's been something that I've been looking at over the last 18 months or so, is going a little bit deeper. And as the time gets older and older and older, the records become a little bit more, you just kind of have to make some connections and some and just take things at face value. But truthfully, I think you start to have to look at things like the mystery schools, where a lot of these traditions, whether it's even the Sufi traditions, the Taoist traditions, and Hindu traditions, where do they come from? And I'm reading a lot of interesting stuff around Egypt at the moment, ancient Egypt, and perhaps some ideas around that ancient Egypt isn't all that we believe it to be. And there's some really amazing work by people like Randall Carson and Graham Hancock, who talk of a lost advanced civilization that predates our understanding of ancient Egypt. And they have all this, geological and scientific evidence to back it up. It's really fascinating. But, perhaps there was some, really advanced knowledge in ancient Egypt that provided the seed for much of what we understand as mysticism now, and even shamanism and the spiritual understandings that we have now in our modern world. Maybe all have their roots in Egypt. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just reading a lot of stuff right now. And I do hope that one day someone will be able to find out that answer.
Yeah, me too. Are you going to learn how to read hieroglyphics as well? Is that been one of your learnings since you've been away for the last 6 weeks?
So since I was able to manifest a book quite well, the next thing that I'm going to, and I'll have to maybe come back on the pod if I do it, I want to do a breathwork session in the pyramids.
Ooh,
in
wow.
the Great Pyramid. So I think that would be really cool. Yeah, I would love, I'm really, really, really wanting to go to Egypt when I can, when we're allowed to, and that kind of thing. I think it's a very cool place. And but going there and getting a guide with someone who's not necessarily just going to show you the mainstream stuff, but the person who maybe takes a slightly alternate view on things.
Tutankhamun's great grandson, maybe, if he's still kicking around.
Yeah, hopefully that'd be great. I went to the Tutankhamun exhibit in Sloane Square. It was absolutely brilliant. And so they have these, all the artifacts from his tomb, and you look at the craftsmanship and the detail of these various artifacts. And then underneath it says that it's 3,000 years old. And I just go, I feel like we would struggle to make this today. And this is 3,000 years old. There's something going on here.
I'm with you, man.
When I went to Stonehenge, while I was on my little trip, stopped over to Stonehenge, and I was listening to the audio guide tour, and the lady was talking about the construction of Stonehenge, and she goes, so these giant sarsen stones were, the largest one I think is 40 tons. And the closest place they could have got it from is 30 kilometers away. So what they probably did is they just put down some logs and rolled a 40-ton stone for 30 kilometers. And these are like Neolithic people. And so it's like, yeah, it probably just took like hundreds of people and And I'm just like, does that make sense? Like, I don't understand it. And so I think and Graham Hancock is absolutely brilliant for this. He's got so many amazing books, on this work. And I love this idea of an ancient civilization that had an advanced civilization that was wiped out somewhere around 12,000 years ago. It's, everyone can just do their own research and come to their own conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a bit of time in South America, and the Mayan civilizations out there, and the sort of structures and the buildings, and when you read into that kind of stuff as well, it just blows my mind. They were so advanced technology, and you go to Machu Picchu, you're like, how did this happen?
And what's so incredible is, you go to these places, these sacred sites that are all over the world that mirror each other. So I can't remember the very specific places, but I remember Graham Hancock talking about how there are places in South America, from the Mayan legacy, that exactly mirror geometrically some of the structures that are found in Egypt, both of which are perfectly aligned with various constellations. So seems to be some sort of kind of red thread that connects all these civilizations together, and it's something cosmological, and it's something mystical and cool, and it's exciting. Graham Hancock recently came out with another book called Becoming America, Before America. Sorry, I'm not doing very good at remembering things, but it's something America, Before America.
Maybe Before America, yeah.
Before America, and I think in that book he talks about ancient civilizations in the Amazon, and how potentially there were tens of millions of people who lived in the Amazon at one point.
Wow.
So very, very, very interesting for anyone who has a bit of time to go down the rabbit hole. But that's what's so cool about this day and age, is that we can jump on podcasts like this and just share ideas and thoughts, and then people can jump online and then go and research them and decide for themselves, this sounds like something interesting or bullshit. That's the great thing about technology, huh?
Welcome to the Mythical Societies and Cultures podcast with Matt and Richie. like history detectives. Maybe we should do that.
History detectives. I feel like we could, yeah, and maybe like Graham Hancock can be our chief or something like that. And
he can be our spiritual guide.
He can be our guide, and he can send us away. I feel like you have to have Graham Hancock on this now.
It'd be rude not to, wouldn't it?
Much. Yeah, I think
it would be rude not to. Yeah, I'm sure he's not busy. I might just drop him a line.
Yeah.
But back to breathwork slightly. Not that I couldn't sit here and talk about ancient lost civilizations forever, but that with breathwork, going back down the sort of spirituality route, they can feel breathwork practices and aspects of breathwork. I can't even say breathwork now. Of breathwork can feel spiritual, as it's a very conscious practice. Has breathwork given you the opportunity to explore broader spiritual concepts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you start to have experiences, and this is, I used to be, and remain to this day, very scientifically minded and analytical. Like I like understanding things. It's a lot of fun to understand things. But what happened as I continued in my breathwork journey was that you start to have experiences that are undeniable. And even though they don't make sense logically, you feel it, you see it, you experience it, you touch it, and you can't go back after that. And then eventually you come to this place of what I would call peace, with the idea that although it's fun and it's good to try and understand things mentally, it really is more about feeling, experiencing, and embodying. And that is really what's going to make the most change for you. And so I mean, yeah, like I've had so many experiences, whether it's experiencing, we talked about like astral projection and that kind of thing, but even, experiencing past lives, meeting deities and saints, and having conversations with, the powers that be, the higher up, and these kinds of things, and feeling all sorts of emotion, whether it's feelings of unconditional love, of being held, of safety, of nurture, of, these are all things that people who ever have tried psychedelics, whether it's things like DMT, LSD, mushrooms, these things, you know it, right? Like you know what this is like, where you just kind of have to surrender to whatever it is that you experience and go, wow. And yeah, that's one of the my favorite parts of breath work, and is that experiencing aspect, that spiritual exploration, that idea of there could be more, and what is that? How can I touch that? How can I feel that? And how can I, most importantly, integrate that experience into and ground that experience into my own life? Because you have a lot of people who will use breath work, psychedelics, Tony Robbins events, even as a form of what's called spiritual bypassing. It's like this idea that you're doing a lot of work on yourself when actually you're distracting yourself by the work. And what can often happen is that people will just go back for more ayahuasca, more mushrooms, more breath work, more seminars, more self-help books, more online courses, more, because I just need to know more. I need to know more, and then eventually I'll change. When actually it's so much more powerful to take one of those things and then integrate it 100%, embody it in your life. That will make more difference than spending thousands and thousands of pounds on more and more and more courses, books, whatever it is. It's not what you know, it's how you apply it. Yeah. And that's what's really important. You know, you can have these incredible experiences, but at the end of the day, you have to sit back and ask yourself, what does this do for me? What can I do different? What does this mean? How will it make me better, more of myself, make me feel more whole, whatever it is? And then what does that reflect in my 3D external reality as I go back into the world? It's a piece that actually I think gets lost a lot in a lot of these things, whether it's plant medicine ceremonies, breathwork retreats. It's like, it's all about blast yourself off, experience. Oh my gosh, you know, I'm in heaven, I'm in bliss, or I'm releasing, I'm healing, all these things. But quite often they don't ask the question afterwards, okay, now what does it mean? You go back to your life. What does it mean? What happens? What do you do? So that's, integration of all these experiences is just as important as the experience itself.
Do you think that's beginning to happen more? Do you think that's, I guess with COVID and everyone being stuck at home and looking for something more when they can't physically go out and experience nature or people or fresh air sometimes, if you live in a poxy little flat in London, do you think COVID has helped that along in a way? It's led people to seek these kind of experiences, and albeit from their own homes for now. And do you think people will carry that on post-COVID? Is it a brave new world after that?
I hope so. I think probably one of the big things that this whole lockdown kind of experience has been for many people is removing a lot of distraction. A lot of things that we could probably, stop us from fully sitting with ourselves and experiencing what's actually going on inside of us. Probably for a lot of couples, even who are living together, it probably has stirred up a lot of things that could be healed in that relationship. A lot of truths, a lot of understanding, a better understanding of your partner. I do hope that people can continue to but to see the importance of having a curious mind about who you are and what it is that you're doing, how you're actually living and experiencing this tiny little blip of time that we get to have on this planet, because it's such a miracle that we're here.
Absolutely,
it is absolutely. If you think about it, I used to have this term called God, I came up with it when I was like 16 or 17. What was it?
Carpe diem.
Carpe diem. The insignificant miracle. And what it means is that if you think about what we are, right? Like you and I sitting here. So we're just a couple of lads in the UK, which is, well, part of the EU for now, not so much soon. You know, but which is part of planet Earth, which is, you know, part of our solar system, which is a part of our galaxy called the Milky Way, which is probably part of this galaxy cluster, which is one of millions of billions of galaxy clusters that creates the observable universe. So what happens to you and me isn't necessarily that important in the grand scheme of the universe. You could see things that way. But at the same time, the fact that we are here, being able to have this conversation right now, statistically is impossible. And if there was anything called a miracle, that you could call a miracle, then you and I here right now is the biggest miracle out of any. If you have to think about all the stars that had to align for you to be here, whether it was something as simple as the other day you turned left instead of turning right, and if you had turned right, you would have been hit by a bus, all the way down to the statistical probability of your mum and dad meeting each other. And then you go down the lineage of the generations of people that have had to meet each other, had to bump into each other, had to have survived yet and met and procreated. And you go all the way down and you exponentially see that, well, you know what? It's impossible that we are here. So that's pretty special. And so I can this term, this insignificant miracle, it's kind of like, you know, in some funny way, we don't really matter, but at the same time, we are the most important thing. And it just goes to the duality and polarity of the world, of existence, right? Everything is opposites, everything is one, and it's also the other at the same time. And you get to choose. And it's a beautiful thing about having this prefrontal cortex as a human being is that you actually get to decide how you look at it. We're the only, as far as we know anyway, I think we're the only species on this earth that gets to have something called an imagination where we get to decide what things mean. For most people, they just run by the primal instincts of their midbrain and their reptilian brain, and just things are instinctual, most animals. But we get to decide what things mean for us, which is pretty cool. So a good question to ask yourself is, what do you decide every day? What do you decide about who you are? What do you decide about what you can do? What do you decide about what is possible for you? And is the only limit of what you are able to do your imagination? Find out.
That's a really nice way of looking at things. I love that. It's probably, cool. I think that feels like a great place to leave it as well, because that is a fantastic note. That is a fantastic note. Nice one, huh? Yeah. I mean, can you recommend any further reading for anyone? I can think of one further reading in particular, but anything else that you sort of studied along the way that could be useful for people?
One, if specifically for breath work, one of my teachers, his name is Dan Brule. He's kind of like the LeBron James of breath work. And he has a brilliant book called Just Breathe. So Just Breathe by Dan Brule is another really good one for just getting started on breathwork. And also for those of you who maybe have experienced breathwork a bit or even have done some training, it's a really, really good book. I like opposites, right? And Dan's book is a bit more, it's experiential and perhaps if you had to classify it, a little bit more spiritual. And if you were looking for something that provided some more kind of hard science on things, something like The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown is really, really good. It gives you just a better idea of respiratory physiology and what breathing does in the body, chemically, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, those are like two kind of opposites that you might like to start with. I would say my book kind of sits in the middle, Yeah. It tries to cover all areas and all spectrums. Yeah.
I mean, I cannot wait to read it. What's the release date again? Is it September?
September 10, it comes out in the UK. Yeah, it comes out 13th of October in the States. But yeah, September 10. And, leading up to it, I'm going to be doing a lot of live stuff online on Instagram and that kind of stuff. It's just to try and share the work and let people know about it. So I've had 6 weeks off. So I'm feeling good and refreshed and ready to teach.
Fantastic. I can't wait to come along to some of your sessions as well.
Thanks.
Richie,
yeah, I know. It's exciting. Who knows when people are going to want to get back together physically to breathe again, but there's a lot of online stuff happening, and I even have an app as well that has that I do live streaming every week of sessions and has a lot of pre-recorded stuff there as well. It's all on my website if you're interested in checking it out. But get involved.
Amazing. And your website is?
thebreathguy.com. And Instagram is the Breath Guy. Everything's the Breath Guy. And it's nice and simple.
And then in 200 years' time, as we've discussed, there'll be the Breath Guy 2. So just make sure you've got that domain on lockdown so no one else can nick it.
That's it. And he'll be a far better version than me, I'm sure.
I'm not so convinced. Richie, thank you so much for joining the Dismantle Ideas podcast and now Dismantle TV today. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Matt. It's been such a pleasure to see you again, to see your face. And we'll have to do a follow-up once we've worked out all the secrets of Egypt and South America and all the Mayans, and just so that we don't leave on too much of a cliffhanger for all our viewers on that guy. Absolutely. I'm going to buy a copy of your book as soon as it's out and send it to Graham Hancock as a kind of peace offering to the literary gods and see if that lures him in somehow. That's great. Amazing. Thanks, Richie. I'll speak to you again soon. Mate. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.